We're very good at this.
We're professionals.
I'm at about 9 seconds right now. Is that where you're at?
Yep. As when you said 9 seconds, it was at 9 seconds.
Perfect.
Like a thing
Exactly
of magic.
right.
Like time's happening at the same pace everywhere. No, I mean it all got started
as if time marches together everywhere on Earth, as if it is a constant which cannot be modified, no matter how much you would wish that to be the case.
It's like the poet said, time marches on.
Time marches on. Welcome, everybody. This is Dungeon Master of None. I am Dungeon Master Rob.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt.
Coming to you from the godless, rainy wastes of the Pacific Northwest.
Oh boy, does this guy have some things to say about Portland? We'll get into that later. But I'm Matt, coming to you from the godful, already sweaty swamplands of the Gulf Coast.
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice.
So let's talk about
Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Well, Kingdom Come Deliverance, because it just launched and it's all a buzz on the internet and there's lots of talk about it. And I have some opinions, Matt.
All I really know about Kingdom Come Deliverance is that it is a computer role-playing game exclusively on Steam, launched by Kickstarter, and it bills itself as quote-unquote historically accurate and gritty, and you have to like bathe and feed yourself,
right,
and all the things that most modern games gloss over because they're not very fun.
Right. That's basically the selling point. The idea is that you take control of Henry, a blacksmith's son or apprentice in 1403 Bohemia.
Bohemia's a fallacy in your head.
Right in the middle of some internecine Holy Roman Empire conflict, and right on the verge of the Hussite Revolution. I forget exactly what it's not like a revolution. It's like a Hussite uprising or something. Anyway, a very crucial moment in the history of Bohemia and the Czech people.
Don't forget Moravia.
So this is if you're a certain type of person, very appealing. The type of person who complains that you can pause Skyrim and shove a bunch of food into your mouth to heal things. Again, not realistic, but that's how games are. Anyway, so for a certain type of person, this is a very appealing game. You have to eat. You're not like a badass. In fact, you suck at fighting and you suck at doing everything until you spend some time getting better. And so the other thing about this game, though, is that one of the developers, I think the co-creator of the studio, has made some racially charged remarks about,
to say the least.
To say the least. So somebody suggested, somebody wanted to know, because this was right on the heels of Witcher 3, which is a great game, but as has been correctly pointed out, has almost zero black people or anybody really with any dark skin whatsoever, which is weird because the setting actually explicitly has such people. Anyway, so Kingdom Come Deliverance was mentioned, was launched around this time, and somebody asked, well, are there going to be any black people? And the designer in question, whose name I actually can't pronounce, I'm not going to bother to, and it's not important, said, in no uncertain terms, there were no black people in Bohemia. Now, so here's the thing about...
Jesus.
So here's the thing about this. He's probably...
fucking Saint Maurice, help me.
Yeah, he's probably right, okay? This is a very small part of a relatively... Not really that, but, sort of isolated region in what is actually, at the time, Europe, in the global scheme of things, is actually kind of a backwater in 1403. So, of course... travelers from elsewhere might not come to Bohemia, but it is also explicitly not, it cannot be said with any sort of certainty that there were no black people in Bohemia, or even in this tiny part of Bohemia in 1403. And it demonstrates a sort of, it's a type of understanding of history that bills itself as realistic, but what that means is that it's just fully attached to a traditional view of history that's been informed by white supremacy and nationalism and all these different forces, and it's not in any
romantic history from straight from like the Victorian era,
precisely,
right? That wants to paint Vikings with horned helmets and stuff like that, right?
Exactly, and we think that's realistic, right? That's what we think is realistic because it's true to history, or it adheres closely to what we see in the history books. It's the same reason why what's his face got all worked up because there was a cartoon about ancient Rome that had black people in it.
Which was confirmed by like recent archaeological evidence,
which is
because fucking part of the Roman Empire, which had lots of people
which is actually explicitly more historically accurate. But we modern Westerners tend to not see it that way because that's not what we have been fed as history. Anyway, we're getting off on the rails. Mostly what I want to talk about here is this idea of realism. And that this is my entry into the world building thing, because so many people say that they want realism, right? They want a real game. They want gritty and hardcore, and they want to have to sleep and bathe and make things from scratch. There's all these survival games that build themselves as increasingly realistic. But
the words you're using to describe it, like hardcore and like gritty, it's a fetish. Realism is a fetish.
I genuinely don't think that you're wrong, and also it's the way that they would describe it to you, these fans of realism are really, it's not actually realism. It's just a type of play. It's just an understanding, because for example, Kingdom Come Deliverance, sure, all of the historical groups are represented and all the heraldry is correct, and you suck at fighting with swords, but also they use modern slang. There are almost magical, alchemical concoctions. You use something called savior schnapps to quick save your game. I mean, these are sacrifices. Yeah, I know. These are sacrifices that people are totally willing to overlook, but
where's the permadeath, right?
Right, exactly.
If it's fucking realism, if you die, you're dead. You have to start the game over.
Exactly. So when you say
you can't play it again, in fact.
When you say realism, and you're inherently choosing what is realism, what to you means realistic, and you're making a value judgment. So the value judgment here is that alchemy is realistic, but black people are not, and that's telling. And that's my main problem with the entire idea of realism, because a lot of, and this is how it gets to Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of Dungeons and Dragons players and DMs often try to run these low magic, gritty, realistic campaigns. But what they're saying what they're doing is not actually realism. It's just a certain style that is perceived to be more realistic.
The basic concept of Kingdom Come Deliverance, if I understand it correctly, is you're a lowly commoner, not quite a peasant or a serf,
a peasant,
but a blacksmith's son.
Yeah.
And you rise to become a hero. Like, that meritocratic kind of story, it does not fit with 15th century Bohemia. It
absolutely does not
at all. Do we have any historical cases of
none.
blacksmith's sons becoming knights?
Unlike evidence of black people in Europe, there are literally, as far as I know, no stories of blacksmith sons becoming knights. And this is something we
not even in fairy tales, I suppose.
There is the knight's
but
tale.
Not in reality.
But that's I think the only one, and it's specifically a fiction. But I mean, there are a couple of these stories in all of medieval history. But as far as I can tell,
whereas you can go to a cathedral in
and
Bohemia
see Saint Maurice,
and see a black knight and see a statue of Saint Maurice. I think it was built after this game is set, but there was one farther to the north in Maidenberg.
Exactly.
Right?
And so this is the problem that we're.
No one thought this was unusual.
Right. This is the problem that we're trying to highlight when we talk about how realism is a canard. It's not actually realism, because it is explicitly, historically, less realistic for a blacksmith's son to rise to become anything more than a blacksmith. If you study history, we are by stories, led to believe that in fact you can always rise above your station. A commoner can become a king, but history is actually very cruel in this respect, and especially before the modern era, people very, 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 very rarely rise above their station. It is almost a hard barrier for almost everybody.
I'm guessing in this game, like in character creation, you're Henry. You can't be like Henrietta,
nope.
right? You can't be.
You are Henry.
You can't choose your gender. Even though, when was Joan of Arc? Like just a couple decades before this.
Actually after, but
after. Okay.
In the same, again, it would actually probably be equally as realistic to have a woman warrior as it would be for Henry.
But that's a choice the developers have said, like, oh, it's unrealistic.
Right.
To have a woman rise,
Uh-huh.
Even though it's just as unlikely as a male man blacksmith.
If it's not clear, Matt and I haven't played this game, and so we don't want to rag on it too hard. I'm
not gonna punish myself.
Things to like about it, and from what I understand, the studio did receive a criticism, and it's not as racist or misogynistic as it could be. In fact, it fits pretty squarely in the racist and misogynistic tradition of all Western RPGs, where they're extremely Eurocentric and patriarchal. But what I really wanted to talk about is, like, what we're talking about here is the realism thing. And so when you're thinking about your games, and
back to D&D,
and if anybody ever pitches you, this is a low magic, gritty, realistic campaign, I want you to really push back hard on that. And if you're somebody who likes that sort of thing, I want you to really examine your motivations in going there, because generally it means not actually realism. It just means a sort of traditional view of history that's informed by not what actually happened, but what we know from the records that exist, and that's limited, and it's probably not actually in any way realistic. As we have continued to point out, the presence of black people is, in this case, probably as realistic, if not more so, than some of the other things that are in Kingdom Come Deliverance. So when you are talking about realism, and realism isn't a bad goal, it's not a bad goal to want to have a more believable game, right, where things happen and
takes longer to heal from injuries.
Precisely, where it takes longer to heal, or where magic is rare, or where, finding a new sword is exciting rather than, I have 100, kobold short swords and I need to just like dump them in a river somewhere. It's not like a bad goal to want that. I'll be fair, I think it's incredibly tedious and boring, and I would never play in a game like that ever again. I've had enough of that for an entire lifetime. But if that's your jam, go for it. I just really want to encourage anybody who's being pitched a game like this or trying to run a game like this to really examine what it means to be realistic.
Right. I think, there, and I think this could be done well. I mean, one of my favorite D&D style set movies with knights and stuff like that is that movie with Alan Tudyk and the guy who OD'd while dating an Olsen twin. Heath Ledger, with Heath Ledger, A Knight's Tale. Right?
That's a terrific movie.
Fantasy,
wow, I forgot.
Right?
I forgot that Alan Tudyk was in that.
There's no magic, right? And Paul Bettany. There's no magic, but it is completely aware that this is a fantasy story, right? I think the crowd sings
"We Will Rock You." Yep.
Yeah. But it knows it's not trying to be realism, because it knows that the fantasy of a peasant winning a joust is a made up story, right? So you might as well have fun with it.
Right. While we're on the topic, this is unrelated, but A Knight's Tale, the movie, would make a great mini campaign or one shot. That would be, you could easily, there's like 4 or 5 characters, and you could easily make that into like a short and fun campaign.
Oh yeah, you got some politics, you've got some romance,
a little bit of combat, a little bit of intrigue. Yeah, it's a good time.
La vie bohème. La vie bohème. La vie bohème. La vie bohème.
Days of inspiration, playing hooky, making something out of nothing. The need to express, to communicate, to going against the grain, going insane, going mad. To love intention, no pension.
Matt, you want to introduce it? I know you're very excited about this.
So yeah, we're talking about a published campaign setting and rule book, Dark Albion, the Rose War.
Dark Albion, folks. And in case you can't tell by the title, it is a grim, dark, high or low magic, high drama, medieval setting with a great deal of emphasis placed upon accuracy and realism and, you know, the nitty-gritty of medieval life.
And paired with Dark Albion, the Rose War, is the rules for said setting, which are called Lion and Dragon.
Right, and Lion and Dragon is, let's not, mince words about this, it's basically an old-school revival mod. It's based strongly on OSR, and it's recognizably OSR down to a lot of the actual mechanics, but it has been sort of reflavored and tweaked a little bit to be as close to what the author believes is real medieval life.
Right. It is
yeah,
billed over and over again as medieval authentic fantasy, quote unquote.
Right. This word authentic, which Matt and I have talked about before as being a canard. It's not real. It doesn't make sense. You can't have authentic anything. Authenticity is a sham. But this author strongly believes that there is a right way and a wrong way to play games that take place in the Middle Ages. And they start out in the rules to Lion and Dragon by talking about how Dungeons and Dragons is not medieval because it is too fantastic. The magic is too intense. There's just too many fantastical elements, and how he doesn't like that. And this is his answer to that.
And the thing that's crazy about this book, and why I think it really grinds both our gears, is that the mechanics are no different than any other old school revival game. They're very similar to the original D&D, but simplified. You won't find any different mechanics than those in Labyrinth Lord or Dungeon Crawl Classics or Lamentations of the Flame Princess. But this author is billing these OSR mechanics as things that work great for like courtly intrigue and sort of representing real life in the Middle Ages, when the whole point of the OSR revival was to get back to like gritty dungeon crawling where slimes fall on your head and disintegrate your characters, or you accidentally stumble upon something that's an alien spaceship and you pick up blasters or something like that. And
right.
So you took away the fun.
I mean, we're not going to beat around the bush. It seems aggressively unfun. Everybody has extremely limited stats. It is very easy to die. You can't really do anything interesting, even if you happen to be a cleric or a magister, which are the magic-using and faith-using classes in Lion and Dragon. The author seems to believe that there is something inherently enjoyable about playing a game that adheres as closely as possible to medieval life, which means all the dirt and grime and death and unpleasantness. And the author has, on Twitter and elsewhere, billed this as the tabletop role-playing game equivalent of Kingdom Come Deliverance, which, if you're a regular listener, you will remember that we have talked about quite recently in less than glowing terms.
And the crazy thing of putting this OSR veneer, this gloss of original D&D on top of something that bills itself as medieval authentic, is you get some really weird things. Like, so in original Dungeons and Dragons, right, elf and dwarf were classes instead of species that you could pick. And in this, because you can't be an elf or you can't be a dwarf because that would probably be too much fun, instead you can be a Welsh person or a Scotsman. 2 words,
right.
Not one.
Scotsman, right.
A Scotsman.
And the author, who calls himself the RPG pundit, thinks that we won't notice. He thinks that we're idiots. He thinks that we didn't see that he just reskinned elf and dwarf. as Scotsman and Cimbri. But we did, RPG Pundit. We're not idiots. We saw what you did. It was very, very sloppy.
Right. So Cymry, or like a Welsh person, which is a weird amalgam of Welsh plus like Welsh traveler and Romani and Irish traveler, are magic people who wear bright clothes and basically have the same stats as an OSR elf. They get spell casting, and Scotsman are basically OSR dwarves, straight down to their resistance to poison. So explain to me how medievally authentic it is that the Scottish people are resistant to poison?
Right. Nothing says medieval realism like having having a culture be significantly more resistant to poison, just because it's not even Highlanders. It's just Scotsman. It's just sloppy, RPG Pundit. We're not.
Well, I mean, Rob, you're a Scotsman. I've tried to poison you many times and never succeeded.
Never succeeded. I am myself resistant to poison, so perhaps there is some truth to it.
I mean, I was surprised when Scotsmen did get a bonus to noticing like stone artistry and
right. Yeah. So what else is unique about this particular RPG setting?
Right.
What has the author done to set it apart from other OSR properties?
Right. Well,
why would we play this instead of just picking up Lamentations of the Flame Princess or Labyrinth Lore or literally anything else?
You get the special bonus of some writing about the world, even in the one that's the rule book and not the campaign setting, where it makes it very explicit. Women are not equal to men.
Oh,
There's a whole little paragraph on sex, not gender for some reason, but sex. That women are not equal to men, and they often can't succeed in whatever it is, whatever class you wanted to pick. So it's like people who didn't know that women in the Middle Ages had different statuses to men. He just makes sure that you're reminded that it's going to be extra difficult if you play a woman.
And in this section, I noticed that the author did try to say, you can be a woman and succeed as much as a man, but be aware that it's going to be more difficult. And this was their concession to the relentless march of feminism, I imagine. There's even a image of a woman warrior. So I suppose that the author has at least realized what sort of world we're living in now, and done his best, despite obviously thinking that there is something inherent to womanhood that, regardless of what sort of fantasy world they're living in, if it's medieval, then they won't be able to succeed as a man can.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like there's a paragraph on sex, but there's no sort of acknowledgement of sort of some of the real history of the Middle Ages, where this is supposed to be set in a fantasy analog to around the time of the 100 Years' War, just after it in the War of the Roses. Mm-hmm. And, there's no sort of paragraph talking on, the rights of women and their place in society, of course, is constantly changing. And, you could argue the late medieval period was a time when sort of the role of women in society.
Oh, my goodness, Matt, I just noticed this. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, it's okay.
But you're totally right. But I wanted to segue into talking about social status, which the author positions as extremely important to the game, which I agree with.
Oh, and he sells it. He's like, social status is super important in my game and my game only.
Right. And I agree with this. This is true. And this is actually something that Kingdom Come Deliverance, I think, gets wrong, because their main character is a blacksmith who somehow becomes important, which is statistically and historically completely preposterous, for better or worse. But this is interesting. So I was just reading this bit about social status.
Okay, go ahead. Dramatic reading.
You're gonna love this.
Okay.
Also, contrary to many assumptions in modern literature and media, while there were certainly some lords who were stupid or cruel, the majority of the aristocracy have a strong vested interest in caring for their vassals and subjects. Their wealth and prosperity depends on the well-being of their subjects, after all, and they believe they were born into their status as part of a divine responsibility to govern over the lower classes wisely.
Oh my god. And okay, I wanted to save this for later, but there's no way. There's no way around this.
I can't believe I didn't notice this the first time I was reading. This is incredible. This is sorry, go ahead, Matt.
It's okay. He's bought into the beneficial noble who,
he's a neo-feudalist.
He is a and this is what I wanted to avoid, but you can't get past any longer, is that the author of this, is proudly like a Western chauvinist who believes that Western civilization is the pinnacle of human achievement, and that there's really no path for prosperity or anything good in the world that doesn't rely on that. So he's a complete apologist of everything from the Western tradition. Like, straight down to every stereotype you would imagine about a Western chauvinist, like, he fits. Like, down to the, like, modern art is stupid, my toddler could draw that. Like, he's one of those.
Yeah. Yep. It's true. And as ahistorical as it may be to imagine that every single lord was a bumbling, lecherous, murderous asshole, it is also wildly ahistorical to suggest that there was something inherently noble about nobility, or they genuinely cared for their vassals. In truth, it was a bit.
If we want to bring history into it,
it's a deeply exploitative system. Yeah.
In the early 15th century is less than a generation or two after the massive peasants' revolt of the 14th century. Like, peasants hated their lords so much they were like ready to like take up arms and almost like guarantee die, just because their lives were so fucking shitty and lords were such assholes.
At the eve of the French Revolution, this is much later, but the nobility were living, explicitly. They were literally prohibited from working, while their peasants were all starving to death. There's nothing inherently beneficial about feudalism. It is not a system that encourages treating your vassals or your patron or the people who work under you well. I'm sorry. I cannot believe that somebody wrote this down in the 21st century and meant it. It just fucking blows my mind.
We don't believe you, cause we the people are still here in the rear, yo, we don't need you. You ain't a killing off good young nigga move. When we get hungry, we eat the same fucking food. The ramen noodle. This simple voodoo is so maniacal, reliable to pull a juju. The irony is that this bad bitch
it's really crazy. And back to like the broader point that, the search for authenticity in a fantasy game is extremely flawed, because you're always going to make choices for the fun of the game, because no one wants to play a game about just dying and starving to death in the Middle Ages, which, if you're being authentic, that's what the game is going to be. Just like if we want to make a TV show about spies, it's going to be about Mission Impossible or James Bond, not some CIA clerk, sitting in an embassy somewhere reading newspapers, right?
And that's why most cop shows have, a bunch of really interesting cases that they have to solve, and not, a bunch of paperwork, which is what cops do a lot of the time. Not to mention, the other things they do. But, I'm just saying, like a real life cop is going to do something interesting 1/10 of the time they do something extremely boring. And it's, that's just like the nature of telling stories. And authenticity is ridiculous to search for.
So he claims authenticity and then uses this as a shield when anyone criticizes, like, your game is weird and sexist and kind of racist against like travelers, and that which is a weird thing to be put in your game. But then even his authenticity is way off. There's a bit in the book talking about like, and this game is supposed to be, just for our readers who will hopefully never see this, in the 15th century of England, right? This is the end of the Middle Ages, the beginning of the Age of Exploration, and, the after the Renaissance, And he writes this whole thing like civilization is survival, right? Beyond the walls of the castle and the farmlands, there are dark things. Like, come on, dude, please. There's like 4 or 5 million people in the British Isles by this point. It's a well-settled land. Yes, there are conflicts, but it's not... You're thinking of the other Middle Ages. The Middle Ages of 500, 1,000 years before this.
And to his credit, the author does seem to have a substantial education in a lot of the nuts and bolts of the Middle Ages. What people were called, different social classes, different material interests, a lot of the I don't know, I'm going to call them datum of history, not actually an understanding of what the historical situation was, but a pretty good grasp of all of the disparate parts that made up the historical time period. He understands the social status of clerics and of nobles, and has a pretty good handle on sort of what magic and alchemy would have made sense to a certain type of person. But in my opinion, right, and Matt's, he fails to put it together in a way that realistically reflects what the Middle Ages was actually like. And this is the failure of his idea of authenticity. And
just an example of that, like, he has a lot on, like, the demonology of the Middle Ages, and, like, sort of his classes are, like, magisters and stuff like that. But there's nothing, he claims to be authentic, and then he rightly says most people are peasant dirt farmers. But he has nothing on peasants' belief of mythology. It's because he hasn't read any real history books. And that stuff is, of course, very difficult to understand and know, because peasants weren't writing down their folk tales. But he obviously hasn't read any of the... he hasn't read... just, read The Peasants of Languedoc, dude. Read that book, please.
I'm at a loss for words when I think about this. But it's very obvious that in doing the research for this setting, that the author hasn't really read anything that's been written in the past, I would say 40 years. Because
I go 60, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm being generous. But a lot of work has been done to help us understand common folk. And the thing is, that's difficult, right? This is the trouble of history. They don't leave written records behind. But a lot of sociological and anthropological work has been done to help us understand what it was like being a common person in the Middle Ages. And rather than understand that, he's just bought fully into the top-down aristocracy favoring written histories that we've had for the past 500 years, and made no effort to really properly represent what it was to be a common person, which is most people, the vast majority of people in the Middle Ages. And he makes some concessions here. I was reading more about social status, which, again, he really so it's weird because he really leans into social status, and you would think that if he was going to put so much emphasis on social class, that he would do something to balance them. But really, he just wants to emphasize how cool it was to be an aristocrat. He's got this little bit about how it is expected in a society that commoners must respect and obey their aristocratic superiors. Talking back, disobeying, or insulting their social betters in most circumstances would be grounds for at least a beating. If the aristocrat in question has some sort of legal authority over their inferior, disobedience or insubordination is even a legal matter, petite treason, where the commoner would be guilty of having disobeyed the authority of the king, by virtue of having disobeyed one of his chosen representatives.
Yeah.
Why would you play a game like that?
I think it's like if you really enjoy pretend beating up people because they pretend insulted you, I guess. I don't know, man.
I've got no idea. I guess I get that he thinks that this is what it means to play an authentic game, but it doesn't sound very fun.
Right, and let's unpack that in the setting, right? So his setting is based on fake England during the fake War of the Roses. That's why it's Dark Albion, the Rose War, which, by the way, when you take the War of the Roses and you call it the Rose War, it sounds stupid as hell. It just the Rose War.
Yep.
Anyway, so just FYI, there's a fantasy setting that does this thing. It has low magic. It has a lot of political intrigue, and it has a lot of social class. Not very many people have heard about it. It's, of course, called The Throne of Games, a song of flames and cold.
Right. But this is a great point, though, because George R. R. Martin set out to, in a sense, authentically reflect a medieval society. And in a sense, he did it, but he did it without being boring. And he also did it in a way that wasn't completely fucking misogynistic and wasn't, and it reflected what would happen if there were equalizing influences like magic, like faceless men. How would it allow common folk to compete with the nobility if you had access to these things, instead of just reinforcing the idea that nobles are nobles and that's all you can fucking do about it.
It's taken the whole, how George R. R. Martin did a cool thing with Game of Thrones and the War of the Roses and Stark and York and Lannister and Lancaster, and it made everything different and fun and fresh. Imagine if we did that, but nothing was actually different. If you read the campaign saying everything is the fucking same, except the French are literal frog people. Right? It's like, know how they call the French froggies? What if they were actually froggies?
What if they were actually...
I'm an auteur.
Mais je vous promets que depuis aujourd'hui, il va être très populaire en France. Vous voyez. Je pense. La mer qu'on voit danser les longues des golfes clairs à des reflets d'argent, la mer, des reflets changeants sous la pluie. La mer.
Okay, so this is the book I was thinking of earlier. We can cut this part out, but it is The Ties That Bind.
The Ties That Bind.
Judith Bennett. Peasant Marriages and Families in Late Medieval England. Anyway, the reason I was thinking of it was a research that suggested, because the idea had existed for a long time that medieval families, because death was so common, didn't love their children. And The Ties That Bind was a book that refuted that idea. Anyway, we can cut this out. I was thinking of that because there's all of these really terrible ideas about what medieval life was like. And this setting really leans into our most outdated ideas about medieval life. And the truth is that social class was important, but also transgressions of that were a lot more common than you would think. Just because theoretically and practically a peasant could be beaten or tortured or killed if they spoke back to their earl or their baron, that doesn't mean that a peasant would actually, in every case, be entirely subordinate to their betters. Especially, as Matt said, this is not that long after some major peasant rebellions.
And to talk more about this book and why I guess this is a Dungeon Master of None first, why we 0 stars, do not recommend it.
Do not recommend, do not buy. Yeah.
Like Rob was saying, it's like, what if, magic was somewhat real and there were fantasy monsters and things like that? There's a space for that, to be sure, to take a historical inspiration and add some fantasy twists, but all the ones in this are just like the rules are as derivative of Labyrinth Lord or any other OSR title, all of the actual new things added that aren't just copying from the Wikipedia of History of Britain are as derivative as possible. Magic all comes from chaos. And guess where chaos lives? In the frozen north. Does that sound familiar? Because that's Warhammer Fantasy, baby.
It is Warhammer Fantasy. There really isn't like an original idea anywhere in this property. And the author hasn't tried to be original. They clearly think that there is inherently something valuable about the authentic lives of medieval persons, and that playing a game set in that way is good and worthwhile. They haven't done anything to try to sell the players on why they would want to play this game. I genuinely have to wonder if the author has actually run a game in this setting recently. I know that based on what Matt and I have read about this, that it's something they've been developing for a while. But I just have trouble imagining that they can keep a group of players engaged with this truly awful setting, this truly tedious and boring and derivative OSR knockoff.
Well, the author's one of those brave posters where when anyone says, like, would you...
A very brave poster.
Oh, yeah, he's like, I have the courage to come on here and post. He's like a living drill
he's a drill
embodiment. Yeah. But, like, whenever anyone says that, he's like, well, I have I RPG 4 nights a week, and all my players love it. They're in love with me, and they would fucking, if I told them to drink hemlock right now, they would do it gladly. But of course, like, no one actually knows any of these that anyone plays with him. So I highly suspect that most or all of it is made up.
The thing is, like, I played in a game like this. I played with a DM who was very into the medieval reflection of life, and we only ever fought bandits, and there was a lot of nonsense about copper shortages, and we had to know exactly how to address everybody. And the thing was, he was a nice guy. His setting was extremely boring. But that game fell apart within half a year. I cannot imagine that this guy, who is very clearly an asshole and a misogynist and probably a dark enlightenment dude, it can maintain a game, much less 4, especially with this monumentally tedious and unpleasant setting.
Yeah, and a few words about the setting. So, it's England in the not War of the Roses. He also gives a tour of the rest of Europe, which is all exactly the same, except simplified and made less interesting. Except for France, which is filled with chaos-worshipping frog people. And everything is exactly the same except for that, which is really confusing. Like, the Dukes of Burgundy are still there, but France is controlled by monsters. It's like, those two things are related. You can't have one without the other. The Turks are scary, and unlike Christianity is replaced with the unconquered sun. I believe that's, just a Roman thing, which was employed in an RPG from Exalted, right? That's what the main god is.
That's the one thing I do like. I think the Cult of the Unconquered Sun is sort of a neat piece of European history that would make a much more interesting,
it's neat,
monotheistic cult than Catholicism. So good for him. I liked that. But
it is stolen from Exalted, by the way. That's the main deity in Exalted.
It's not an original idea.
Right. And the Turks, they worship the crescent moon, but they don't live in Turkey. They live in Turkland, just like the Huns live in Hunland, and the Scots live in Scots land. It's just, and just like some words about how this is writing. If you like reading what is this 138-page rule book, 285-page setting book, where you read the words basically and really real and lots of quotation marks and capitalization and all caps words for no reason, then you'll love this.
We've spent 30 minutes now talking about how this is not great, and normally we would not do that. That is not the purpose of this podcast. This is not your Kickstarter sucks. This is not a review podcast, and we try to be positive generally, but Matt and I took issue with this setting and this author for a particular reason, and it's because he has been involved with a recent resurgence in, as we talked about earlier, gatekeeping, and the absolute, in our opinion, worst, most toxic form of gatekeeping.
I mean, this is a person who comes from a tradition of people who embrace their toxicity and love that people are mad that, they're assholes to other people. And he started by, writing a thing like, oh, people have a problem with gatekeeping. Well, I'm proud to be a gatekeeper. I don't want new people to play, especially if they come from things like Critical Role, which is much more popular than anything I have ever done, and I'm jealous of that.
It's very obvious where this is coming from, and these people have. I really genuinely thought that most of them had either cycled out or gone quiet after the past 5 years or so of new people coming in, but I don't know what it was. I don't know where this came from, but there's been a real spike in the last week or two of people saying, oh, if you watch Critical Role, if you watch Acquisitions Incorporated, if you watch C-Team, and especially if you enjoy those things but don't play, you're not part of the community. And that is fucking bullshit. That is not the truth at all. And it is so weird to see this come back because I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know where these people have been hiding for so many years.
Well, okay, I think two things. One, it's like straight up jealousy, like these things are really successful and cool and most importantly fun, and these people probably feel like they're not having a lot of fun and they're jealous of that. The second thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this is part of a broader reactionary movement that is obsessed with fighting a culture war in all areas of geekdom. In video games, from like, the Gamergate people to, people who are like, Marvel is bad because, I don't know, they're social justice warriors or something.
There are women and they do things and they matter. And no, I think you're right. I do think this is just one front in the tedious and ongoing and never-ending culture war where a rear guard of reactionaries are trying to defend their hobbies, which they perceive as belonging to them, from people who they see as not belonging, which is, as we have said before, generally women, generally people of color, especially women of color. And I guess what was surprising to me about this is I thought that the tabletop role-playing front of this war I thought was already sort of lost to them. I thought they had mostly given up.
Right, I figured they went to like some other sphere of...
Right, because it is still very, very much in vogue in video games. That's why Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is by everybody's account a buggy and weird and not all that particularly fun game, has sold over 1 million copies because... One, it plays into this nonsense authenticity role idea, which is often a dog whistle for certain types of reactionary thought, and also because at least one of the creators of the game is, one of these vanguards of gatekeeping, no black people, no women allowed. But I had thought at least that because of the general, how small it was and how vocal certain segments have been, that we were sort of done having this fight in tabletop role-playing. Especially since the edition wars have ended, right? There was a lot of gatekeeping. We were still fighting about 4th edition and 3.5 and what kind of people were coming in with 4th edition. But there's so much more room now that I thought we were done having this fight.
I don't think it's anything specific that's going on within role-playing games. It's something that's happening in the broader society and in broader geek culture, and like it was super great to see that this one loser guy posts a blog post and then basically everyone and their dog comes out to fucking shit on him and say, hey, if you want to just watch Critical Role and be part of the D&D community, you are absolutely welcome here. And there's thousands of people saying that, and there's like a dozen.
Kate Welch and Mike Merles and Adam Coble and Matt Mercer and everybody who's anybody in the community came out and said, "Oh, this is not true. If you just want to watch Critical Role or Acquisitions Incorporated or whatever, you're part of the community. You are welcome. Fuck those guys." And that's pretty definitive because it's still a small enough community that if the big voices say, "Hey, look, that's not how we do things," and that matters.
And it should come also as no surprise that, this particular person, right, believes he's fighting some larger war to save Western civilization from, and if you look at the things he's posted and his tweets, like he's extremely Islamophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-feminist, pro this sort of alt-right figures like Jordan Peterson and Mike Cernovich and Milo Yiannopoulos. And he said some really vile things like Poland bears no responsibility for the Holocaust without getting too much into the historical argument. Like, that's a really scary thing to say. But, onto shitty, little things like, of course he's a person who's upset that the new Doctor Who is a woman, right? He's that kind of person.
He's got old-time religion, buries his cash in a coffee can, and he makes his decisions down on his knees. He's a full-grown man, and he had a vision of a fire. It burned up all the land. You could call it.
Again, we didn't want this to just be attacking one person. That's not really the purpose of this podcast. But he really represents. He does speak for a large audience and a large segment of the community. And this is a person who, we have to be honest,
yes, we have to acknowledge
credit. He has a credit in a Dungeons and Dragons book. This is a person who has some connection, some tangible contribution to the world of tabletop role-playing games. Right. And that's a legacy. That's not just him. That's a legacy that the whole gaming community has to deal with, because it's across the board, right? There are misogynists, there are racists, there are absolutely cultural appropriators, there are, colonialists working and writing, and it is their, it's their work that we have to sort of push back against and try to move beyond.
Well said. And I mean, I don't want to say it's all been fixed and these people are fading away, because if the last week's events show anything, it's that the battle against forces that would exclude people and a battle against reactionaryism is like a never-ending fight, right? But
right.
it's an encouraging response. Always vigilant. Oh man. Yeah. Oh, these people. They're just so shitty, and I mean, I want to
they're really very awful. Yes, they're just very terrible. This is a person who believes so. It's not just that they're offensive, but they're also offensively wrong. This is a person who has posted that cyberpunk, that 4chan and the Pepes are the vanguard of cyberpunk. That cyberpunks are libertarians. And anti-establishment. It's flies in the face of every cyberpunk story that has ever been written, because every single one of them is explicitly anti-corporate. They are anti-government, but they're also anti-capitalist, and libertarians lick the boots of every corporation that feeds their egos. Sorry, we're getting off in the weeds here.
Well, listen, Robert, these
people are very wrong.
If you watch The Matrix, you'll notice that the whole point is that at the end, Neo transforms into Bitcoin, which is it's a metaphor for the gold standard.
It is. Oh God. So the point that we're trying to make here in our long and slightly intoxicated ramble is that there are a lot of that these people want to try to hold the hobby back. They believe, and this is endemic to nerd culture, to gaming, to science fiction, to fantasy, to tabletop role-playing games. This is a realm of men, that these are accomplishments of Western civilization, and that to allow too much influence of things like women, minorities, postmodernism, it weakens them and threatens their way of life and their passions. And we are always going to have to deal with this. Like the poor, they will always be with us.
Well said. So, I feel like we should end on a positive note. Is there...
Well, the positive note is that this guy got blown the fuck out. Every person on the internet came out against this guy and against his ilk, saying that's not the way it is, that's not how we do things, and that explicitly you are welcome that nobody cares except for these people about keeping people out. We all want to have fun. We want more people in the hobby. We want there to be streams. We want there to be different types of games. We want weird gender queer anarchist punk games to be played by all sorts of weird people. That's fun. There's no like enjoyment. There's no value in keeping people out at this point in time. And that's the encouraging part. And most people, I think, feel this way. It's just so frustrating that there are people like the RPG pundit who hold power in the community and have roots and who are able to sort of dig in their heels and say, no, that's not the way it is. I want to keep people out.
Yeah. And you're right. Everyone shit on him. And, it does suck that, he was somehow tangentially connected to 5th edition. And, he's the type of person who's like actually claims that he contributed to 5th edition, while the 5th edition people are like, yeah, we hardly ever saw this dude. Speaking of playing weird characters and fun gender queer half tiefling things, you know what this guy hates?
Oh, I can't even wait. I can't even imagine. What does he hate?
He hates Planescape so much. He's like, Planescape is when Dungeons and Dragons went downhill. It's like, oh my god,
this is how you know he's wrong, because Planescape is amazing. That's how you know not to listen to these people, is that they always hate things that are fun and good. Every time you see somebody like ranting against something that's and they're ranting against women and people of color, and they always hate things that are fun and good. And Planescape is not just the setting, but also the game Planescape Torment is one of the greatest CRPGs ever made, one of the greatest video games ever created. And to hate that, just, these people have bad taste. You don't have to listen to them.
See, Rob, when you're a pipe smoking aficionado, right? You cannot make this stereotype. When you smoke the fine tobacco herb, and you can appreciate the finer things like hating fun games like Planescape.
Yeah, I've got nothing else useful to say about this particular person. We just we didn't intend for this to be a 45-minute rant about one person in particular, but because of their central location in this recent resurgence in gatekeeping, we wanted to address this particular problem. And so I think that we have fairly effectively.
And I would like to say, like, if you are not going to get Lion and Dragon or Dark Albin, The Rose War, and you don't want to read 40 pages of biographies of nobility from the War of the Roses, basically paraphrased from Wikipedia, but you do want to play a fun game about political intrigue that is set in Planescape, you can play, if you do want to play something that will piss this person off, a really fun RPG, you can play SIG, The City Between. It's basically a fun game about intrigue, which will get you all that same intrigue itches, but set in the confluence of the multiverse, where tieflings and half angels and pixies and gods and demons and weird things all mix, and you have to figure stuff out. And then I would also recommend, if you want to play an old school revival, you should do so, because there are many fun old school revival games where you can dungeon crawl to your heart's content, and I'm a big fan of Labyrinth Lord. So if nothing else,
you can have nitty gritty, quote unquote, authentic medieval play without leaning into weird stereotypes and unfun nonsense like Lion and Dragon. There are other ways to get your kicks.
And Dungeon Master of None highly recommends Labyrinth Lord and highly recommends SIG, The City Between.
That's it for us today.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, friends. Remember, everybody is welcome to play Dungeons & Dragons. Anybody can RPG. Have a great week, and we will see you all next time.
Nazi DMs. Fuck off.
Fuck off.
I'm not trying to kill turtles without my hairstrings colors. I'm just trying to do rap songs and be down with my brothers. Hey, maybe a few others too. We can get a pay-per-view. We can watch boxing all the time or join the ground crew. Or the crew that changes ice to the warm corn courts. Make athletes take off skates, put on mesh shorts. That sounds like a dandy, watching a flick, organized crime. I like the Wesley Snipes and Ving Rhames for the prison time belt. Make a soda line, pass it to a friend of mine. Maureen made cacciatore, seasoned with a sprig of thyme. Hot dog for lunch, hot dog for dinner. Don't eat breakfast, I am no beginner, no. Hot dog for lunch, hot dog for dinner. Don't eat breakfast, I am no beginner, no. Just don't be gross.
Yeah. It's knowing history and refusing to learn anything from it. It's creating a campaign setting and then creating the next 100 years of history after it, as if you're not actually trying to create a campaign setting for people to play and make choices in. Instead, you just want to fucking rewrite English history without really changing it, which is a maddening task. So confused.
Hot dog for lunch, hot dog for dinner. Don't eat breakfast, I am no beginner, no. Hot dog for lunch, hot dog for dinner. Hot dog for breakfast, I am no beginner, no.